literary slummers, to another episode of Shelf Aware, the podcast where we are reading books outside of our comfort zone. I'm Em.
And I'm Anna. This fortnight, we are delving into the world of cyberpunk. Something that I'm not super familiar with, but Em has read, the book we read this week, or fortnight, was Neuromancer by William Gibson, which is one Em had read before and disliked, and therefore... And I think you've read other books in the genre too, right?
Somewhat.
Yes.
Somewhat.
But this one just kind of left a bad taste in your mouth, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so, okay.
What's the deal with cyberpunk?
I first read this book several years ago in a class for college. Like, it was a sci-fi literature class.
Yes. But assigned reading is always garbage.
Assigned reading is garbage, but, like, at the same time, that class gave me a lot of books that I really, really liked.
Okay.
So it wasn't just the class, I don't
waste.
think. But yeah, I read this ages ago. For those of you who don't know, but I feel like everybody has at least heard of Neuromancer, maybe in passing. But it's a very, very famous sci-fi book from the 1980s. It won, like, the Triple Crown of sci-fi writing, like the Hugo, the Nebula, and the other one. That was important. And it was, like, the first book to do that in 1 year.
The Philip K. Dick Award.
There you go.
That guy.
And it was, like, pretty influential in the genre. I read it in college, and I fucking hated it. I didn't understand anything that was going on.
Yes.
I thought it was very boring and stupid and...
so nonsensical.
Very nonsensical, but...
It didn't age well, either. I think that was the biggest issue I had with it. It aged terribly.
Yes, and that's definitely one of the things I want to talk about is, well, the aging of it, I guess.
Yes.
But, well, actually, I guess I should say, so cyberpunk in general, as the genre, this is not the only book I've read in the genre, I suppose. I've read short stories that are cyberpunk, and I haven't liked any of them. I read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is technically, like, proto-cyberpunk. It was slightly before cyberpunk was cyberpunk. And it's the novel that Blade Runner is based off of, which Blade Runner is, like, the cyberpunk movie of all cyberpunk movies. I didn't really like that one either. And I'll get into in a second why I think I have issues with cyberpunk as a genre. But this book specifically, kind of my thoughts on it now that I've reread it, I liked it more the second time around. I understood stuff more. Which part of that is thanks to Wikipedia's plot
synopsis. Oh my god, I know.
I
honestly, like, I was reading it alongside reading this book. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yes. And I'll start with the positives.
Okay.
I think the writing is very evocative. I think this book was ahead of its time in many ways. It was a trailblazer. It did a lot of things, like, it basically invented the genre, whether or not that genre should exist, you know. I'm not sold on that, but, you know, I hesitate to say it's a bad book. Another thing for me is that my main complaint with the book is kind of what we've already said. It's very confusing and disorienting and, like, hard to comprehend as a book that I am physically reading.
It was like a fever dream.
Yes.
Yeah, I know I sat there and I read it, but I'd have to go back and reread sections of it over and over and over again, and I still just left with impressions.
Yes.
There's no plot in my mind. There's no characters. It's just... ugh.
Now... The thing is, because I was reading some modern critique of this as we, like, prep to go into the episode, and this is a common complaint. A lot of people reading this book now have this complaint, and I assume probably people back in the 80s had the same complaint, but, you know, there wasn't an internet as much then, so there wasn't Reddit boards to get on and bitch about. But a lot of people have this complaint of, like, I do not understand this. Am I stupid, or is this bad writing that didn't age well?
Yes.
And usually the response from people who like this book, which is a lot of people, is it is intentionally confusing in order to create this jarring tone, right? To create this, like, whole atmosphere of, like, disconnect and whatever, which I do get. And I'm not saying that that cannot be a stylistic choice. What I am saying, though, is making the stylistic choice of I am writing a confusing book and just being bad at writing and writing a confusing book are basically the same in the perception of it as the reader, right?
Yes.
So it's like, it's very convenient that he's like, that's my intention, was that you wouldn't understand it. And I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, if you reread it 4 or 5 times, because it's great literature, if you reread it 4 or 5 times, you'll get it. But I don't feel like that's I get that rereadability is a good thing, but I think that if your book cannot be understood in one reading,
yes,
it may not be a problem with the reader. It may be a problem with the book.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it definitely is in this case,
it
but maybe.
It's like a little bit like gatekeeping, right? Where like either like you weren't cool or smart enough to understand it, and that's your problem. Which to me is like, why do you want to risk alienating an audience? But I guess he didn't, because he did win the super awesome awards of science fiction, so clearly...
And people still put this on best of lists all the time.
Yeah, so clearly the right people understood it, but then also there's like this voice in the back of my mind and it's like, but did they? Or is it just because like one person said they did, so everyone was like, oh yeah, I get it too.
It might be an Emperor's New Clothes situation where, like, one person said that they got it, and then everyone was like, oh, yeah, totally,
exactly.
I see the clothes, too.
Exactly, yeah. Same,
I don't know.
Totally cool, totally awesome.
And again, I don't want to say it's a bad book, because, like I said, I think the writing is very evocative. I think, like, there's a lot of good moments, I guess, and I really do like the ending. Usually that's the opposite of my taste, like my complaints with these books is like, oh, I liked everything up until the end and then it ended poorly. I think the ending was actually really good. And if it had been like 150 pages shorter and it was just a short story with like kind of just that ending, I would have been into it.
Yeah. It was definitely
but it was
dragged out in a strange way. Like, I don't know, it was action packed and there was always things happening, but at the same time I'm like, why does this need to be happening?
Yes. And then kind of getting into my complaints with the genre as a whole.
Yes.
I think, man, I warned you that this was going to be a long opening segment, and it sure is.
I don't want to get to the part where I have to explain what happened in this book, so please keep talking.
Great. Okay, so my complaints with the genre as a whole, from what I've experienced of it so far, which I mentioned books, a few books, short stories, I would point to, like, I feel like I've seen a decent amount of like cyberpunk movies and television.
Movies and anime are my experience with
I was gonna say I'm not a big gamer, but like I've seen people play cyberpunk influenced games, and obviously like there's a lot of those that exist,
including one based off Neuromancer.
Yeah, although I don't know if that one's particularly good because it was in the 80s, so it's probably not. But anyway, the thing about cyberpunk to me is like when it was explained to me as like what it was as a genre, and maybe when we get into like the next episode in this unit, when you kind of look more into what makes it a genre, like the way it was explained to me is essentially it's like gritty dystopia with a lot of computer elements, and it asks questions about like society, like it's questioning society. Okay,
have we gone too far?
Right. So like here's the thing about that though, the part that's questioning society, that's all of sci-fi. That's all sci-fi. So I don't know why we're pretending that cyberpunk is a specific. No, all of sci-fi asks questions about society. So like I don't know. That's the entire point of maybe not even just sci-fi, all speculative fiction and possibly all fiction. So like that's a dumb marker for a genre.
Yeah.
The other part of the equation, the other two parts. Okay, so gritty dystopia, again, that's not really specific to cyberpunk, so I guess it's like in connection with the computer thing. But then when you kind of combine those, really all that is an aesthetic. Like it's not anything about like plots or characters or themes, or like the genre is essentially an aesthetic. And this is not the only genre that's like that. I would argue a lot of times steampunk is like that, although that at least has like some retrofuturism aspects that can be like interesting to explore, of like what if. But for the most part, I feel like the thing about the thing about cyberpunk is that it's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like this book, a lot of it is really, really cool. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of lines where I was like, ooh, that's a cool line. Or like visuals where I'm like, ooh, that's a cool visual.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's fun, but that's pretty much it. It's just, it feels very...
It's just like an Instagram filter over sci-fi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's just not enough substance,
Mm-hmm.
I think. I feel like it's very shallow and
Yeah.
very like...
I'm always much more interested, and maybe there is a sci-fi book out there that does this, or a cyberpunk book out there that does this, is I'm always very much more interested in how we got to that point and the background, like the technological and political background of how we got to that point.
Yeah.
And that to me is much more compelling than just like, everyone's dirty, but we have computers in our eyes, you know?
Yes. And I mean, like, again, even if they don't want to like, because this was something I was reading, like, an interview with Gibson. I'll see if I can find it and link it. Something along the lines of, like, he was like, good sci-fi doesn't explain stuff, it just puts you in the middle of it. And, like, I get that. I do get that argument. And that's kind of, like, a big argument in sci-fi of, like, how much you should explain stuff. But at the same time, I kind of feel like it gets to a point where it's just you're not explaining stuff for the sake of not explaining it.
Yeah, I think there are definitely books that do this a lot better of like... And that's one of my complaints with this book too, is like a lack of world building. Like there's a lot of tech description.
Things just thrown out.
Yes, and there's just things thrown out, but we're never given a why or even just like a more specific reason for things being where they are in this book. But there are definitely sci-fi books out there that do this a lot better, and one that I'm going to mention when we get to the part of like other things that we're reading. And again, I feel like I have to preface this a lot by saying like, it's not that cyberpunk itself, we're not saying it is a bad genre, it's just not one that appeals to us or is in my aesthetic, you know, like...
Well, and also, I mean, like, I feel like part of the problem is that most of my experience with cyberpunk is this stuff that's very 80s, right?
That's true,
like,
too. Yeah, it's a very...
I don't know what modern cyberpunk looks like, if it exists. Because I guess kind of in some way we all have, like, computers in our eyeballs now. Basically, we're, like, one step away from that. So, like, I guess maybe it's not as interesting anymore.
We're there now. We are cyberpunk. We're living it.
We're there. This is no longer punk. This is mainstream.
Poor and dirty, and I have a computer in my eye.
Exactly. So it's like, what's even the point? But yeah, I don't know. Maybe like I would like more modern stuff better, because I do think that the kind of the datedness of it doesn't help, and the fact that this was like the first one. So we talked about this, I think, with The Hobbit, where it's like, yeah, a lot of stuff is really cool in it at the time, but we've seen it like 80 million times now. Like every single technological aspect of this book, like Futurama has done a goof about, and that's not the fault of this book, but it's like when it gets to the point where everything that was fresh and new about it has been parodied to death, like it's kind of, as a reader, not that great. Like I can appreciate it for like, oh, this was the example of it, but it's not necessarily interesting except as like an academic sort of exercise.
Yeah, like we've kind of been spoiled by what has come beyond, or what has come after this.
Right.
I wonder,
but again, that's not the fault of William Gibson. Like
something like Mr. Robot maybe would be a modern cyberpunk.
I think it is actually listed on some as cyberpunk, but here's the thing that kind of undercuts my thing about maybe I would like modern cyberpunk. I didn't like Mr. Robot.
Oh, I love Mr. Robot though.
I know.
But I also just really love Rami Malek, so maybe that's the whole...
I mean, he's great, but I actually had a lot of complaints about it that I had about this book, where I was just like, I don't really understand what's going on, and I don't get the point they're trying to make, and I feel stupid.
Very fair. I don't like things that make me feel dumb.
Well, we've rambled about, or I've rambled about the genre for 20 minutes now. Let's get into the plot synopsis.
My God. I honestly have no idea what was happening in this book. It took me, for a book that is less than 300 pages long, this took me so long to read.
Yeah.
It took me like probably 5 or 6 hours, which is outrageous for a book this length.
It didn't take me that long because I had read it before and I knew going in I was going to need some help, so I had the Wikipedia ready. But I actually started it last night, and I read the first 12 pages, I think, and then I was like, I literally went, fuck this, I can't, and just put it down. And was like, I might not read this one. But then I went to bed and I woke up this morning.
I was like, maybe this will be the book that ends this podcast. But
we powered through.
I powered through. All right, so let's see. I wrote all of this down, my summary of it, like an hour before we started recording. So it was a little bit after I'd finished the book with time for me to reflect on it. So I might have missed a lot of things and forgotten how everything connects together. So we'll find out.
I'll try to chime in when I can,
Please
but
do.
I really don't imagine I'll be much help.
Yeah. And I think another problem with why I feel like I wasn't able to get my mind around the plot of this book or what was happening, especially in the scenes where he's like jacked in and hacking and stuff, was because this was
so
like
stupid.
not pre-internet, but like widespread internet. Like he coins the term cyberspace in this book, which is like a term that we
I think it's actually in one of his short stories prior to this.
Right. So like anything that has to do with him going into cyberspace and hacking and doing, I'm just like, I don't understand how this like fits into what I understand about the internet. And the fact is that it doesn't. But it's so like the internet is so pervasive and ubiquitous that I couldn't separate the two in my mind.
Yeah,
so.
like I said, it works for the 80s when it was like,
back when
this
you
stuff is just coming up and we don't know where it's gonna go, but then it like went in a certain direction that wasn't this direction in the following decade.
Yeah, they banked a lot on the fact that payphones would still be around and they would use them to hack. I know like phreaking was a thing back then when they would like use certain tones on phones or payphones in order to hack. I don't know how this shit works, dude, but
but again, that's all window dressing, I guess. Like I can get over stuff that, like I can get over in sci-fi stuff ending up being anachronistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Because like, get it, technology changes quickly. Like you're not going to be able to predict everything.
Yeah.
But it does make it hard to read it now as like just because it's so deeply in the text. Like it's so hard to parse it when it. Like we are such a like the internet is such a part of our culture now, and this is like a version of the internet that isn't the version that we are familiar with.
And I think that made it like one of the most inaccessible books for me, because even like older sci-fi, like when we read the book about Bossy,
they'd rather be
right. Like that didn't have anything to do with
none of that.
So, like, that was fine. You could understand that, even though it was written in the 50s. Like, you were like, okay, whatever, I can follow this pretty well. But this was just so inaccessible, and I think it's just because of that disconnect of, like, I couldn't separate my internet from William Gibson's internet, and so, whatever. Anyway.
Oh, you know what we didn't say before we got
who's this book for?
Doing the summary, which we still haven't done.
That's okay, because we're putting it off even longer. Who is this book for? Who would you recommend it to?
I do think that sci-fi buffs maybe should give it a shot. Just to like, I would say, here's what I would say. If you like sci-fi, give this one 50 pages. And if you aren't into it, feel free to duck out. Yeah.
If you really enjoyed The Matrix, Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop, try this out.
Yeah. And I think that I would also maybe recommend this to... Maybe, this might be a stretch, but to people like me who had read this in the past and didn't like it, maybe give it another go, because I do think it does become, like, I hate to agree with the people who are like, you have to read this book 5 times to get it, but it does seem like maybe you have to read this book 5 times to get it.
Yeah, but I just don't understand what compelled the first person to do that.
Yeah, that's a lot of work to, like, commit to.
Oh my gosh. Or, like, maybe read the Wikipedia article first, if you don't mind spoilers, and then go and read the text.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have been a good way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the plot really doesn't matter in terms of your enjoyment of the book. It's all the style, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the fun part of it.
Yeah. Or maybe
if you really like film noir people should read this.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Maybe try the audiobook. I don't know. Okay.
That'd be fun.
All right. So, our main character, Case, is a former console cowboy, which is what they call hackers. And he tried to cheat a former boss And that boss got revenge by giving Case too much of a certain kind of drug that affected his nervous system and made
Mycotoxin. It was mycotoxin,
Okay.
which I noted very specifically because I think it's hysterical that it is mycotoxin, because mycotoxin is just poison from mushrooms. And this is the big
He was
scary...
just tripping balls, man.
Well, I'm just like, okay, like, you have all of this technology and that's the big thing that brings them down is mushroom poison. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there about, like, the thing that brings down this, like, technologically connected man is, like, this natural substance. Maybe it, like, has some deep meaning, but I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
As a dumb person who read this book, I just think it's funny.
Well, the certain kind of drug, like, makes it so that he can no longer use the internet or something. Like, it does something to his nervous system, and he uses his nervous system to become one with cyberspace. I didn't understand how that whole thing worked. Like, was he plugging himself into something, or?
Yes.
Okay.
There are, because they mentioned, like, I can't remember what they're called, but it's like electrodes on his head.
So was he actually, like,
few
wearing
times.
stuff, like those little sticky things? Okay.
Yes, he has, like,
Nodes.
I think receptors on his head, and then they have, like, a headband that he puts on. I'm pretty sure.
I see. Okay.
So, in this universe, the only way to Google stuff is to get, like, cybernetic implantations, I guess.
And then you, like, talk to someone and they talk back to you, like, they read the results to you. So it's just like, and the way that it was described was like, it was basically like real life because of the way all the data was connecting, and you were just like yourself but in a holographic version of things.
Yeah, I was picturing it very much as, like, again, those very 80s, like, virtual reality type spaces where it's just, like, the grids.
Yeah, like Tron, or like that episode of Futurama where they go on the internet.
Because I think they mentioned a few times, like, when he's in cyberspace, sometimes it's, like, a voice that answers him, and then obviously we get into the actual, like, AIs and whatever. But I think also a few times, like, holographic letters pop up or something in front of his face. I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
I don't know if that was
one.
real life or internet life. I don't know.
Yeah, hard to tell.
So Case is living in, I think, Chiba, Japan, and he is addicted to drugs and leading a lifestyle that he is kind of secretly hoping will get him killed eventually. Like, he's just hired himself out as a hitman, and he's just being poor, dirty, with no computer in his eye. It's very sad. But eventually a woman named Molly finds him, and Molly has, like, these lenses in her eyes and some Wolverine fingernail shit going on, and also leather jeans.
Molly is, like, to me, very much the, like, early 2000s cool girl from the movie.
Yeah, she's like Trinity.
Yeah, like, she's just like, look at all of these cool features that she has.
Yeah.
And, like, her personality doesn't exist.
And then ultimately, like, she doesn't mean anything at all to the plot, because some man has to come save her, and usually the man is inept. But it's fine. Whatever. She has been hired by some guy named Armitage to track down some people to make a team to do some hacking. I guess they want to steal an AI.
The Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, they want to steal the Declaration of Independence in the form of an AI so that they can break into another AI. Whatever. Yeah. But Armitage is able to pay for some super advanced surgery for Case that fixes his nerves and allows him to log back on to AOL, and also he, like, gives him a pancreas that makes it so that he can't do cocaine anymore.
He goes and gets him an AOL CD. It's like, here you go, bud. This is real cutting edge here in the 80s, but in about 20 years or so, this is going to be filling landfills everywhere.
And Case and Molly start having sex because question mark?
Natch.
Yeah.
We get, I would say we get an appropriate amount of descriptions of Molly's boobs for a sci-fi book in the 80s written by a man. I was like, you know what? If this was written today, I'd be taking him to task, but honestly, I'm okay with it.
The only time I thought it was super egregious was, like, the first time that he stims into her, and she just, like, starts fondling her nipples, and was like, hey, Case, how's it going? I'm like, okay, no woman's just gonna, whatever. Anyway. So Case does this thing where he can like stim into Molly, which basically when he is logged onto the internet, he can log into Molly and see and experience everything that she's seeing and experiencing. Like he feels the pain that she feels, and she can like sub-vocalize thoughts to him, I guess. I don't know.
Which they mentioned in this book, and I saw that it becomes more of a thing in the next 2 books in this trilogy, because it is a trilogy.
Yeah.
Kind of like a disconnected trilogy, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not that it's all the same characters. But,
yeah, same universe, different.
But they mentioned, like, this idea of, like, stars, where it's, like, people, I guess, who let other people experience their life every day. And they probably do, like,
that's
fun,
cool.
luxurious things. Well, they mention it a couple times in here, but it's, like, throwaway lines to, like, world build. Which is, like, I thought that was one thing that I was like, that is very, very precious.
That's like a Black Mirror
like,
episode.
Instagram, like, YouTube vlogs, like, we're not in their head, but it's essentially the same idea of, like, people just like living life with people.
Yeah, they like influencers. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. And I was trying to think, like, I don't think that was really a thing in the 80s. Like, I don't think there was a comparable thing. Like, a lot of times you can be like, when someone predicts, like, cell phones, it's like, okay, well, you have phones. You could see that they might get smaller.
We want them
to
go with us now.
Right, exactly. But I don't think there was, like, I don't know if that was, like, celebrity culture, I don't feel like was the same as it was today. I could be wrong. If you were alive in the 80s and know what the equivalent to Instagram influencers would
Tiger
be
Beat magazine?
I guess. Like, I mean, like, definitely there are models and stuff, but, like, not in the way of, like,
we didn't have as much access.
Life.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they break into this place called SenseNet, which I guess is the company that's housing the AI, which this AI, the smaller AI, is the consciousness of a guy named Dixie Flatline that trained Case to do the hacking back in the day.
But his name isn't actually Dixie Flatline.
No, it's
actually
something
like
McCoy.
Yeah, like, I feel like it's Petey, but I actually don't think it's Petey. It might be Paul.
Polly McCoy.
Polly McCoy.
Yes.
Maybe. Possibly. Don't quote us on that.
About maybe a 60% chance that we're right.
I did want to bring this up just because it was another fucking issue I had with this book that made it fucking incomprehensible. Everybody had 18 fucking names.
Yes.
Every single person I interacted with had, like, a different nickname for them. And sometimes it was a code name, and sometimes it was just they decided to call them that. I'm just like, I can't follow what the fuck you guys are talking about if the character's name changes every scene based on who they're talking to.
Yes, because we call him McCoy, we call him Dixie, we call him Flatline. It's just, it took me ages to realize it was all the same thing. And then the AIs, like the big ones that we get to later, they go by a personal name, and they also go by the name of, like, where they're housed. And so
and then, like, even, like, frickin' Molly, like, Molly was, like, Molly, and then, like, she had some other pseudonym that people used, and then, like, when they eventually get to the weirdly racially charged Jamaican planet or whatever, they all had, like, a different name for her out of nowhere, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like it was like, oh, it was like
the
Mama
Scabby
Cat
girl or something, or
no, because that was the Panthers.
Oh,
the Panthers had that name for her, and then the Jamaican guys had a different name for her.
Yeah,
which, like, I don't know. What was the deal with the Panthers? Were those supposed to... Because it's this gang called the Modern Panthers.
They're, like,
I was like...
domestic terrorists. And I don't know if they were supposed to be a callback to, like, the Black Panthers.
Yeah, that was my question, too. Like...
Yeah, so they hack into SenseNet with the help of these Panther Moderns, which... Let's see what Wikipedia has to say about the Panther Moderns.
I don't think they just said it was a gang, I think.
You're probably right.
Because I was interested.
Street gang. And they do a simulated terrorist attack on SenseNet, which somehow involved, like, micro machine guns and killing people.
Cool.
I don't know, man. It was so weird.
For the number of people that died in this book, I absolutely never felt any tension that any of the main characters would die.
And then I'm like, if they died in cyberspace, do they die in real life? I don't know.
I don't think so.
That's not real bullets hitting them, so, like, who gives a shit about what the Panther Moderns are doing? I don't know.
Were they shooting people in cyberspace, or were they shooting people in real life?
I don't know. I thought it was simulated.
I thought it was real.
Because they all got on their payphones, and they were calling in. They were just on the payphone going, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat, because they were shooting. I don't know, man. I don't understand this book.
I thought the payphone thing was just them... Oh, I don't even know what I thought with this scene.
But anyway, so they do that, and then Molly goes in and steals this ROM that has Dixie on it, and Case hacks. I don't know. And they get the AI, which is, I guess, what matters. But also, I was like, but did we need this to happen?
I think we did thematically. I don't think we needed it for the plot because, like,
yeah, like
the
an introduction.
plot doesn't matter. Because the reason that they get the AI, as it turns out, is to help with this overall plot of getting the other AI.
Yeah.
And so when they get this AI, it's like, oh, he's going to help with the hacking. But it's like, you could have just had the one guy be good enough at hacking.
Yeah.
You didn't need to do this. But I mean, like, in terms of the ending, like, it was a good... His plot line was a good ending, I thought. Like, the way that this AI ends up going down, you know?
Yeah.
But it didn't add anything to the plot, really. Except, again, to give Case somebody to, like, bounce stuff off of.
A friend.
Yeah.
And then after this, Molly tells Case to start looking into Armitage because shit seems a little weird to them. And so Case is just like, Google, tell me who Armitage is. And it's like, he's some real guy named Corto who was part of some military operation called the Screaming Fist, which went haywire. It was basically like the government wanted to launch this attack against Russia, but they knew that Russia had developed a way that would stop this attack, but they made their guys do it anyway, and it caused the deaths of everyone except one person, and that one person was Corto. And he escaped with his life. And after escaping, the AI that they're trying to hack into reached out to... Well, they don't find that out till later, but I'm just going to tell you now because fuck it. So the AI that they're trying to break into is called Wintermute. And that AI reached out to Corto when he was going through rehab or I don't know what, and basically programmed a new personality into him called Armitage. And so Armitage is doing Wintermute's desires. What's the word I'm looking for? He's doing his
bidding.
Thank you. Yes. So they find all that out there and they're like, well, shit checks out. Let's just keep working for him. Because also, I didn't mention, Armitage is like, I put poison sacs in your bloodstream, Case.
Yeah.
So and they will dissolve naturally over time unless you do what I say. And at the end of the job, I will give you an enzyme that will make the poison go away. Okay. There's like no logical way to tell this story. All right. So they go to Istanbul to recruit the next guy they need named Peter Riviera, who does some sort of holographic projection hallucination type shit. And also he is like a drug addicted sociopath.
Yes.
They get him. Whatever.
And it was the most confusing.
This, I wrote in the book, like, I literally wrote what the actual fuck is happening here, because there's
like a scene where they're like contact, I guess. They like go to this place, I think, where they think he's gonna be, and then they all see like some horrifying creature and they shoot at it, and then like Riviera's there and they're like, come with us, is essentially how it broke down, right?
Yeah, like I guess Riviera projected this image of some
but you don't find out he has that ability for like 8 chapters.
And then they don't like explain it.
It's just like ages later, he creates a holographic porno for everybody at a restaurant. And at that point, you're like, oh, I guess that slime monster from earlier was this, but they don't like say that or explain that in any way. So it's just very confusing. And I don't even know because didn't the one guy get his like finger chomped off or something?
I think he lost his finger when he shot his gun.
Oh, yeah.
But okay. I don't know, like, then why would you have that gun that made you lose your finger?
It's a bad gun, is the thing. All of the weapons in this, I was like, I don't want to advocate for, like, let's all have super weapons and guns that can shoot really fast and stuff. But, like, at the same time, everybody's running around with, like, fucking shurikens and some, like, goddamn, what the fuck was the cobra thing?
I don't know.
Just a stick?
Let's read the description of the cobra because it makes no sense to me. Maybe someone out there could draw it.
If you'd like to turn to page 15 is
Oh
where
my
it
god,
is
it
in
was
my
that
edition.
far back.
Okay, the lid was yellow cardboard stamped with a crude image of a coiled cobra. Inside were 8 identical tissue-wrapped cylinders. He watched while mottled brown fingers stripped the paper from one. She held the thing up for him to examine, a dull steel tube with a leather thong at one end and a small bronze pyramid at the other. She gripped the tube with one hand, the pyramid between her other thumb and forefinger, and pulled. 3 oiled telescoping segments of tightly wound coil springs slid out and locked. Cobra, she said.
So,
What?
like, was it a slingshot? Was it... I don't know.
The first time reading it, it sounded to me like it was just like a telescoping stick that you could hit people with and had like a spiky thing at the end. But now I'm thinking it was more like nunchucks, but like multiple parts maybe. But now I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't know.
Maybe like a whip, but with like a cat of nine tails, you know, but
Yeah.
with 3 and it's a cobra. I don't fucking know.
And also with
that's
metal
this whole
tubes.
book. Every description in this book.
You said so many words and I still don't know what it is.
None of them go together. I understand English. I know I do. Anyway.
A gold steel tube with a leather thong at one end and a small bronze.
It doesn't make... I read it like 1,000 times. Someone
So
draw
I think
it for
the
me,
pyramid
please.
part is like a button, I think.
Okay.
But then I don't know what the leather
No, it's like
thong is
those
for.
whistle things where you pull the one end and to make the noise, but you pull the one end to make the cobra come out. I don't know.
It seems like, and then eventually it is revealed that people like have lasers and shit. So I'm like, why are you fucking around
Why
with
don't
this
you
garbage?
just always use a laser?
Just use a laser. We don't need to do this.
Oh my god. I don't even know where I am in this. Just
Riviera, we just picked him up.
Okay, so yeah, they pick up Riviera, and then also the AI named Wintermute reaches out to Case and Molly, just to Case, I think. I don't know if he reaches out to Molly at this point, but he reaches out to Case by calling him on some payphones. But Case is like, nah, bitch, I don't want to talk to you, and hangs up the phone. So I'm like, wow, that could have been a cool place to propel the plot, but no, let's just keep doing this crazy fever dream of a book. So it turns out Wintermute was created by some rich-ass tech family called the Tessier Ashpools. And they own a villa on a planet or a satellite or a space station, I don't know, named Freeside. And also, they are often cryogenically frozen and also cloned.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
They just unfreeze themselves when they have business to attend to. I don't know.
I think the situation, okay, I think
they
what it
wanted
is
to live forever.
Is that there is the parents, the mother and the father. And the mother, we find out, was killed by the father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the father started cryogenically freezing himself and would, like, get up every 30 years or whatever. And then go back in cryogenic freezing. In addition, there was cloning going on. And I don't know. I think they were clones of those two. Like, I think it was...
Well,
Jane.
I think they had, because they have daughters and...
Well, they refer to them as daughters, but he also definitely fucks them. So I think it might be clones of his wife, and they're legally his daughters. Because he says at one point that he has one unfrozen to be, or like he requests a clone or whatever. He like fucks her and kills her. And he refers to her as like he says something like, I know that might be strange to think of like for something that's legally my daughter. So I
totally missed out on that.
I think maybe they're clones of the married couple, or they are clones of their children, and
Which
it's
is
just
also
really
gross.
fucked up. Like, either way, it's pretty bad, but...
Yeah, because they call them, like, lady or sir, a number, and then their name. And the number is supposed to specify, like, how many times that one has been cloned or something.
Or which number it is. I don't know. I'm unclear.
100% unclear.
They might have also been cryogenically frozen, but the main cryogenically frozen one is the father.
Yes.
The father husband.
So they have made Wintermute, or the wife of the family had made Wintermute, but she had also made another AI. And there's a body called the Turing Police that dictates how powerful AIs can get. And they basically said, nah, wife of this family, that AI is too powerful. We cannot allow you to do this. It is illegal, whatever. So she just, like, split it into two and then gave Wintermute the directive that it had to, like, its main directive was to join with its counterpart. So essentially, what it boils down to is that Wintermute is the one controlling Armitage / Corto because he put that personality in there, and he's manipulating, that's the whole point of the book. It's manipulating a lot of the events that brought this team together, and even going so far as to, like, before this team was even put together, like, it was just basically awake and watching this family for years to come up with a plan to combine its two parts so that would become a super powerful processing unit.
Now, here's my one question about the whole Armitage. Well, I have many questions, but a question about the Armitage thing, right? So, like, Wintermute created the Armitage personality, right? Like, he didn't get that from somewhere, right? He said, like, it's like a whole cloth personality that he installed over Corto's personality, right?
I think so.
Okay, so, like, because here's the thing, every time Wintermute shows up, he's borrowing the aspect of someone else that, like, and he specifically says, I can't make my own personality. So, like, but you can make personalities for other people, so just make the Armitage personality, and then just start doing that one. That's
just
making your own personality, isn't it? Just be that guy.
Like, yeah, why do you have to, like, knock people unconscious and brain dead, and then present them with the body of a loved one or a friend and be like, hi, I'm an AI, come to speak to you.
I mean, I get that it's a cool visual and also would be very handy for the movie that, like, you can just keep reusing actors, but, like, that seems like a bit of planning that probably wasn't intentioned in the writing of the book.
So the AI was just too busy. He was thinking of the grander picture, that the just smaller details escaped it. Anyway, the team attracts the attention of the Turing police, and Case, and only Case, I guess, is arrested by them. As he's being taken into custody, Wintermute is able to take control of some nearby security systems, and he basically just kills the police officers. Yeah. So, like, cool, I'm glad that we went through all that.
I'm glad that was a plot point in the story that happened.
Because then there's, like, at the end there's this line that's like, oh, the AIs, they made it so that there was no crimes committed and the police are no longer involved in an investigation. So I'm like, cool, so then why did we even have the police? Like, like, if that was to ratchet up the tension, it didn't work because I had no idea what was going on. Then Armitage starts falling apart because he starts to remember things about his past and being Corto, and he, like, thinks he's still on that failed mission, and so he's like, we have to evacuate, and Wintermute is just like, okay, and he just launches him out into space.
You've skipped all of Jamaica Planet, by the way.
I know, because I didn't understand Jamaica Planet at all. And I did write in my summary, I have a line that says he is saved by this Rastafarian guy that is with him for reasons I don't understand and aren't covered in the Wikipedia article.
They go to a planet or space station or moon, I don't know, and it's like colonized. It was like colonized by like 5 guys who were like, I guess, like, kind of up there for grunt work.
They were supposed to colonize somewhere else, I guess?
Yeah, and they were like, nah, fuck this. We're just gonna take over this area.
A different thing.
And then a bunch of other people somehow got there. But point being, there's some weird shit with, like, the elders being like, we know that this is... So I guess, like,
this is
probably
Babylon,
Wintermute,
the end of days.
Yeah, like, I guess Wintermute probably influenced them somehow. But they convinced one of their people to go with as, again, just a person to be along so that Case has someone to talk to, except not in cyberspace in, like, the rest of the time.
Yeah. Again, what?
It's fine.
They
and
also,
so
like,
he could be the muscle at the end, because needed.
And they also, I guess, do some training there on Jamaica Planet where they, like, prepare to be in zero gravity.
Yeah. And again, we're saying, like, Jamaica Planet, and they specify it's, like, Rastafarians, except for one of the people who founded them, and they're all like, hey, why don't you have the accent? And he's like, I'm from LA or something.
Yes.
Which, like, okay. But also all of the characters who are Jamaican, I do want to point out, do speak in a very,
very stereotypical,
very fun Jamaican patois that is written phonetically on the page. Fun for everyone.
As if this book wasn't confusing enough. Yes, so let's see. Wintermute kills Armitage, so then Case is like, ah, shit, there goes my enzyme. I'm gonna die from, or I'm gonna the poison's gonna get me now. But Wintermute is like, well, if you go into this villa to help out the people that are, like, so Peter and Molly are inside the villa trying to do some stuff that needs to be done in person. So Wintermute's like, yeah, I just go inside there also, and once the job is done, because I was the one that created Armitage, I'm the one that knows the enzyme, so it's really MBD that I killed this guy, and really, honestly, we just could have done without him, because what else did this guy do, except for just be a puppet?
And also, what was the point of any of this plan? Because it's like you said, he's like, okay, so the plan at this point is that Peter is supposed to seduce Lady 3Jane.
Yes,
in order to get the secret code word out of her.
Yes.
And then Molly is supposed to go in and kill Peter and get the code too, I guess, or get it from Peter, not sure. But she's gone in and has gotten captured because Peter's gone rogue at this point.
Yes.
And it's like, no, fuck all this. Which, who would have thought? He's a sociopath. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to follow the computer's plans. But then also we find out that, like, Lady 3Jane has, like, been talking to Wintermute.
Yeah, it's like, since she was a little girl.
It kind of seems like if Wintermute, and has also, like, done things at Wintermute's behest.
Yes.
So, like, it kind of seems like, number one, we didn't need Peter because Molly could have just gone in and done all of this. Because Lady 3Jane, by the way, is, like, bi as hell and super feeling Molly. So, like, she could have just seduced her, number one. And I feel like the computer should have known that about Lady 3Jane because it was pretty obvious.
Uh-huh.
So, like, Peter was unnecessary entirely.
Yes.
But then we send Case in to go, like, get the info once Molly fails. And it's like, well, why don't we just send Case in the first place? Why did we need Molly?
Exactly.
So that's dumb, too. And then it's like, okay, but the computer also has been talking to this woman her entire life and manipulating her. Why did we need them to go in at all? Just have the computer be like, yo, please email the password to my friend. Like, why did we need to do any of this?
It was such a, like, overly convoluted plan. There was so many moving parts. And I think at the end it was supposed to be like a whole, like, wow, look at all the small details that finally all came together to make a bigger picture. But it was just like,
and I think there was something about, like, Lady 3Jane's mom, the original, like, inventor, not wanting them to be together or something. And, like, Lady 3Jane was, like, trying to follow her mother's wishes. And that's why she was, like, withholding the password. But then they get the password out of her so easily.
Yeah, she's like, oh, here it is.
She's like, well, I guess you're right. Here's the password. And it's like, okay, why didn't the fucking magic computer that has access to all information ever except for the password, because that's one of the things he's programmed to not be able to know.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I get that you can't ask her and have her tell you, but just be like, hey, you pick up the payphone and call somebody and tell them what the thing is. And then we don't have to do any of this. So many people died.
So much unnecessary
including Peter at this point, which is because again it's like so overkill. Like, so Lady 3Jane has a ninja bodyguard named Hideo.
And there's so much, like, backstory about this bodyguard from several different characters.
I believe he's like a clone of, like, the same clone that attacked
because his whole
Molly.
family is into weird cloning.
Yes.
And he just keeps popping up in this book, but then at the end it's just like he's blinded, and then he chases off after Peter, and that's it.
Okay, let me break this down though, because he's blinded in this fight with Peter. Peter, like, lasers his eyeballs out, which, okay, cool.
He had, like, a laser in his chest. It was like, what?
Everybody has, like, really fun mech, like, implantations, and it's really super fun.
In case it's just, like, a meat bag that can get on the internet.
But Peter, like, his main thing that he has used in fights so far is creating beautiful illusions that make people think stuff is happening that's not happening.
Yes.
With his drugs. Like, he has drugs that allow him to do this. I don't want to get into that, but okay. So he lasers Hideo's eyeballs out. Uh-huh. And Lady 3Jane is like, you fucking idiot.
He practices in the dark.
We used to blindfold him all the time so that he could shoot with his bow and arrow, which is Hideo's weapon of choice, by the way. Laser versus bow and arrow. What the fuck?
Who will win?
But anyway, so then Hideo goes like chasing after him, which like, okay, so even if Peter didn't know that he happens to have practiced in the dark all the time, like the thing that you just did took away your one really good weapon aside from the lasers. So it's like your good weapon was you can create visual illusions.
You were an idiot.
Just blinded this guy. So that's very stupid. And also you have a laser. Why didn't you laser him to death? Why did you laser his eyes?
Why did you go for the eyes, Peter?
And then, to add onto this just immense stupidity, Lady 3 Jane's like, oh yeah, Hideo's definitely gonna kill him. And Molly's like, well, it's cool, because even if Hideo doesn't, I've been secretly poisoning him this whole time, so he's gonna die anyway. Cool, I guess. Seems like
whatever.
All of this bullshit with the lasers and Hideo was not needed then.
It was so stupid. There was so much build up to this Hideo guy, and then it just ended like oh. Which is like what most of this book is. Oh.
Oh.
So let's see. They're in the villa. Oh, so before they even goes in the villa, though, like, Case begins to hack into Wintermute, but then the other, like, big AI, who we learned is named Neuromancer, tries to trap Case inside the internet, which makes Case go brain dead IRL.
And he's done it, like, a couple times, right? Like,
yes,
this is, like, his big play.
Yeah, this is the big one where he, like, creates this space in cyberspace where Case is like back in that shitty part of Japan and he's with his ex-girlfriend that was killed in this part that I didn't mention because it's dumb and I didn't understand it. And then she's like, come stay with me here, Case. It's a perfect, beautiful place. And then Case is like, no. And that somehow defeats the internet.
Again, okay, so like...
Oh, that's not how he escapes. I remember how he escapes now.
Oh,
that guy causes him to OD on drugs. And so when I guess his body
this at all. I've
dies,
read this book twice and I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, that's how he wakes up from this dream, is the guy put so many drugs inside of him that his whole body shut down, and I guess that cut off his connection to the internet. He just restarted the modem, man.
Okay, so like, again, this is kind of the part of the book that I liked more than the rest of it. Like this whole back, like 50 pages where stuff is actually happening. But okay, like you are a magical supercomputer AI that can create anything and create personalities, because this is the thing we find out about Neuromancer, is that he doesn't have to wear the face of like someone else. He created his persona whole cloth, and he's like, I traffic in personalities. It's what I'm good at.
Yes, he like traps people's consciousnesses in cyberspace.
I don't think it's so much he like I don't
read
it as like
he copies
he copies them and lets them live forever in cyberspace, because like that's what he did with the girlfriend, because he knew like he could see the signs that like the situation was going bad, so he like copied her persona and put her in cyberspace to save her. But then obviously her like meat self is dead, so that gets kind of into questions of like, is that still her or is it a copy, or does it matter, blah blah blah, whatever. But okay, the thing to point out with this is it's like you are a being of infinite capabilities that can create any scenario and create any sort of person and like offer this man anything in the world. And like what you came up with is like, hey, do you want to live in this garbage barge and hang out with this like girl you kind of like? What?
The girl you got addicted to drugs and then stole from you?
And I mean, like, I don't know if we're supposed to read it as like Laura Lee was like the love of his life or something, but it's like, it definitely doesn't seem that way. It definitely seems like he doesn't give a shit about her for most of the book, or he's just kind of bummed about it. And it's like, I don't know, man. Give him like a water slide palace. Like, why was this your big thing? Like, give him like a never-ending supply of food and like a really nice place to sleep.
Yeah,
and,
like something that he would actually appreciate.
Chocolate pudding, like something interesting that would like be new and interesting.
Yeah.
Not like, here's your, like, the garbage. And I think it's like they do go to like Oceanside kind of hangout that's like different from what he usually,
but they
like
have
it
to,
was like a new area
for food, like shitty ration food. It's not even real food.
I think I think if I am to break this down as like literature, it's like, oh, he's offering him to start over in kind of like a Garden of Eden situation, away from all the like technologies of the world, but actually, haha, he's still trapped by technology. We can't escape and go back to nature.
But like
I
why would
get
that be compelling to someone who's addicted to technology?
Right. And also, like, I get it from like the point of view of a reader. I don't get why the computer made this choice from the point of view like it's not a logical thing for the computer to have done.
Yeah. You know, if I was Neuromancer, I would have been like, okay, the scenario is you succeeded. And now you're rich, and you and Molly are together having weird sex all the time, and everyone wants you to hack for them. That's the scenario I create to trap him in there forever.
Right.
That's all he wants. That's what he does.
Yeah, like all he wants is just to be able to be online in the computer all the time. So I feel like actually if Neuromancer had led with like, hey, you get to be in a computer simulation all the time, he probably would have been like, oh, okay, tight.
Yeah, fuck
but
those
like
guys.
Instead he's like, here's a beautiful island for you to hang out with this girl who I guess you care about.
Died 200 pages ago.
Right. And it's like, well, obviously this isn't gonna be appealing. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So he wakes up from that, and this is the point where Wintermute asks him to go inside the villa because Peter has betrayed Molly and attacked her. Case goes inside, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff happens with the laser and Peter being drugged. Okay. They do the thing with the speaking of the password and hacking into Wintermute simultaneously, and Wintermute and Neuromancer unite, and they make a super genius AI who can talk to other super genius AIs that are out in different galaxies and shit, I guess. And then Molly and Case are paid for their services, and they try to work it out for a while, but then she leaves him, and Case continues to hack, and he gets a new girlfriend named Michael, and that's the end.
And, okay, so I do want to point out, though, a big part of this book is that Case is an addict, and I think, like, again, there's obviously, like, parallels to be drawn between, like, the drug addiction thing and the technological addiction and whatever. Okay. Mm-hmm. But he's, like, literally an addict to drugs. And when they recruit him and put the things in his brain, they swap out his, like, pancreas and liver, I think, and make it so that he is not affected by
he can no longer
the
be
drugs
addicted.
that he is currently on.
Yes.
So, like, cocaine or whatever.
But he really wants that.
But he really, really wants it. And so at a couple points he, like, finds more intense drugs and takes those. Yes. And that seems to work out pretty well for him. And then also, like, at the end, part of the epilogue is him being like, he got another surgery and got a new pancreas and livers. I presume so he can do more drugs.
Yes.
Which, like, that's his choice, I suppose.
That's a cool
and that's
moral,
fine.
I guess.
But I also don't really understand what we're supposed to take from that.
I guess just that he went back to being a regular old shithead. I don't know. He can get on the internet
like, I
now,
feel
though.
like this is another book where the main character, I can almost accept this as like a good book in terms of characters if we accept the AIs as the main characters, but they're not on the page enough for that to be really an option. So like Case is the main character, but like he doesn't change at all from the beginning to the end, right? Like unless I'm missing something.
No,
he's
he
addicted
really
to technology.
doesn't.
He wants technology, he wants drugs, and he ends up wanting technology and wanting drugs.
This whole like situation, he acts totally unaffected by anything happening to him at all times. He's just like, well, gotta keep doing the job.
He gets very upset when Corto dies because he's like, fuck, now I'm gonna die.
He's gonna die.
Yeah, but he didn't even like get that upset when he thought he was gonna die, like because Corto was like, hey, I put these things in your brain.
Yeah.
He wasn't like, oh, fuck you, man. He was just kind of like,
well, better log on.
Guess I gotta hack. Gotta
check
hack
my
fast.
Emails.
Like,
I haven't been online in 2 years. I have so many spam. Gotta delete them.
As a character piece, and I think this is a big issue I have with this book. I've said that so many times in this episode, but a big issue I have with this book is that the characters are pointless. There's no any of the characters that have any sort of arc or interestingness about them. Like, we don't get to see their full arc. We don't get all of their story. We just get bits and pieces. It's like, I'm interested in Peter, I'm interested in Lady 3 Jane and her dad and their weird family situation.
I like that Julie guy from the beginning.
He was all right.
I thought he could have been interesting.
He could have been. And then I like the AIs, but like,
Yeah.
we don't get to hang out with any of them. We have to hang out with this dumb cowboy, this dumb council cowboy. And I just...
It was such a frustrating book.
Like I kind of said, I don't think that the Molly was particularly interesting either. Like in terms of... She had a little bit more going on, but not much.
Yeah, she was just stereotypical tough girl but like written by a man so they don't carry through as tough girl.
Yeah.
You know?
And like sad sexual abuse backstory, which is always fun.
Yeah. So, bleh. Glad I'm finished with this one. It didn't make me feel positive about the genre as a whole. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
If this is like heralded as one of the best, if
the
not
best
the best
offerings.
So as you know, one of the changes that we have made with our podcast is that we are going to be trying to find something within this genre that would be appealing to whoever picked the unit, whatever. So, is there anything that you would like to see changed, either about like that you would have found more appealing in this book, or in just anything about the cyberpunk genre as a whole?
I mean, I feel like this is such a low bar now for me.
I
And
know,
again,
right?
I totally get. I don't want to get a bunch of angry tweets or emails. Actually, I would like to get those just to have some sort of connection on this podcast. So if you want to be angry at me, go ahead, like tweet at me.
Don't be angry at me. I didn't choose this book.
But I will say, like, if you are like, this is a good book, I'm not saying you're wrong. I totally get it. I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of the writing and the style and how influential it was and everything like that.
The genre has merit for some people.
Right. And again, it just was not a book that I liked. That being said, I think because it is such a low bar right now, there are several directions that we can go that might improve. I would love to see something more modern.
Yes.
I don't know if that's even possible. I would love to see more character-centric takes on the genre. Less aesthetic and more like actual import on like the characters and how they relate to society and what we should be taking away from this book and whatever, instead of just kind of vague feelings about how technology is bad for society, I guess. And I had one other request, but now I can't remember. Oh, just that I can like comprehend it without reading it multiple times. So like anything in those directions at this point would probably be good.
Okay. Well, the good news is, I don't know if we probably don't want to talk about it too much, but the book I have picked for another like example of this genre. So we're gonna do like an example, a more classic example, but since we picked like the classic example, it's just kind of gonna be another classic example of the genre, and then we move on to the one that I think we'll both like. But it's from 2002, so it's a little bit more modern.
Interesting.
Yeah. And also, there is a TV series based on it that is very modern. Just came out last year.
I think I might know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, if you don't like the book, maybe you can just watch the show instead. But we will talk about that more at another date. But I will keep those things in mind. I have a good idea for a book. I've been kind of like sitting on this for a while because we had talked about for a long time before recording these episodes what we wanted to do for our first units. And so I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think I've got a good one that we will both like for the last in the series.
Cool.
So
looking forward to it. Excited. I hope that my horizons get expanded.
Yeah. I hope this is going to be a successful arc in general. But I guess instead we should talk about what we've been reading that reminds us of cyberpunk, or like things we would suggest along the same vein. Whatever in general you've been liking lately. What would you recommend?
I mean, here's the thing. I've got a few in mind, but I can't remember which ones of these I've already recommended. So I think I'm probably going to go with, because I was thinking like, okay, classic sci-fi stuff. I'm going to go with Forever War by Joe Haldeman, which is another like kind of... I
don't think I'm familiar with that.
Oh, really? It's like another one that's kind of a classic of sci-fi. And it's like about time travel, sort of, and this like war that is lasting over centuries between humans and aliens, and this guy who's fighting in the war, and they keep like having to go through, I think, like time jumps, so it's like this whole thing about like everybody that they know from home is dying, and specific reason that I wanted to bring it up is because I think it is an excellent point of what I was talking about at the beginning, that like it is not cyberpunk. I don't think anybody defines it as cyberpunk. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody's going to come at me and be like, oh, it's definitely cyberpunk. I'm pretty sure it's not. But it is a perfect example of sci-fi being pretty much always about like social issues, because it was written as a response to the Vietnam War and kind of deals with those issues in a space lens, I guess. It's a
Sounds good.
classic sci-fi
Yeah.
that deals with social issues and kind of has computers, but it isn't cyberpunk because it's like not this annoying aesthetic thing that cyberpunk is doing.
Well, dang, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of that before. So I think sci-fi is a genre that I like, but have not read a lot of. So I might have to check it out. Educate myself.
Yeah. So what suggested reading do you have this week?
My choice for this week, I keep saying week. My choice for this fortnight is...
Oh yeah, I did too, so fuck me, I guess.
That's okay. Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, which is a novella, but it's like the first book in a series that I think turns into longer books, but which is awesome because it's a sci-fi book written by a woman, and a woman of color at that. But it's about this girl named Binti, who is the first of her people to be offered a position at this university, which is like has a really good reputation. But she has to like leave behind and kind of run away from her family and leave behind all of her cultures and customs and enter this scary new world where people, aren't familiar with her, look at her strangely, kind of don't know how to interact with her. And then on her way to this university, her ship is attacked by a alien race that is very scary. She is able to kind of come to an understanding with them, and it's a 96 pages, less than 100 pages long, but there's like a lot packed in to this very short story. So again, like you said, it's like this sci-fi story that has these questions about society, but isn't necessarily cyberpunk. And it also does that thing where it throws you into this world and this setting and this different type of technology and everything, but does it in a way that doesn't leave you asking what the fuck every 5 pages,
I haven't read Binti, but I have read Akata Witch, which is also
I want
by
to read that next.
Nnedi Okorafor.
Mm-hmm.
And I also recommend that. So I guess that I would also like Binti, so I will back up your recommendation.
Yeah, listen to the audiobook too. It's really short. It's like 2 hours. But if you listen at 1.5 speed like I do, it's not as long at all. But it's very good.
So next fortnight, we're going to be returning to Anna's unit of new adult. I have been scouring the internet trying to find just the earliest example of new adult that I can find. The problem being they basically all came out in 2012, and they're basically all the first book in a series. So we're going to do the best we can. We are going to be reading Losing It, which is Losing It #1 by Cora Carmack.
Cool.
Which sounds like it's going to be a mess.
I kind of hate it already.
It seems to be about a girl who's trying to deflower herself and ends up fucking her college professor.
Oh, yay! But it's only 189 pages.
Yes. There's a lot of, we'll get into it next week with kind of the origins of new adult and how the genre came to be. But yeah, looking forward to it.
I am having mixed opinions.
Until then,
if you can tell us about celebrity culture and the influencers of the 1980s,
then hit us up on Twitter at ShelfAwareCast, or email us if you have any suggestions for books or units that we might want to do in the future. ShelfAwareCast@gmail.com. We are also on Instagram. And remember, we are currently running a promotion where if you talk about us on social media or rate and review us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or both, you can email us and get some free stickers.
Yes, we would love to hand those out. I've given them to a few people. So we do have some people out there repping our podcast, but we would love it if you guys spread the good word. As always, thank you to Ben Cope for the use of our theme song. You can check out his YouTube channel in our show notes below. And we are on all of your favorite podcast aggregating platforms. So if you haven't followed or subscribed to us on one of those, we would really appreciate it if you would. If you use Apple Podcasts, leave us that 5-star review. And if you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can tweet about us. You can email your high school English teacher about us. You can go on Neuromancer message boards and tell them how much we disliked this book so that they can come yell at us, but maybe end up liking our podcast. Who knows? Do those things. Like Em said, let us know if you do those things. We'll send you some stickers. They're very cool. You can check out on our Twitter. We have tweeted the sticker images so you can see what they look like beforehand as well. And in the words of William Gibson, don't let the little fuckers generation gap you. Chug, 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 chug. Get you that energy.
It's not even energy today.
What is it?
It's
real sugar. Orange cream.
okay.